when people consume more dietary fiber, they live longer, they're less likely to have a heart attack, they're less likely to die of heart disease, they're less likely to be diagnosed with many different types of cancer.
Dr. B, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. And if you could maybe just back up a little bit and talk about square one, just about your career. Who are you?
It's a good question. Thank you, by the way, Doug, for having me here. I'm excited about this course that you are creating. I know it's going to do a world of wonder for many people. Who am I? I think when my position on this has evolved. And the reason that I say that is that I find myself in a place that I really truly did not expect. So, but I think if you focus on what my sort of North Star has been, or like what has been my principal motivation in life, and what is my purpose, it really hasn't changed since I was a teenager. And the purpose, so the purpose remains completely aligned, but the way in which I express that intent has changed. And so going back to me as a teenager, so first of all, for those who don't know me, hello everyone, I'm Dr. Bulsiewicz, and I'm a gastroenterologist. And that means I specialize in the digestive system. So like the esophagus, stomach, the intestines, the colon, the liver, the pancreas. And when I was a teenager, Doug, I dreamed of being a doctor. And the reason for this was that I was very idealistic. And I wanted a way to spend my life and focus my energy on helping others. And this felt like a great way for me to do it. That's how I can like really just invest into and lean into making other people's lives a little bit better. And so I went through a rigorous process, 16 years, starting in college as a pre-med. And from that point, 16 years later is when I emerged fully complete in my education.
Wow.
So that I could then enter into the world and actually take on this mission. And in that journey, Doug, there was a seminal moment for me that changed my life. And it was, once again, it was unexpected, where I was the one who was sick. So through my 20s into my early 30s, I lived a life where like it was all sacrifice. There was no room for me. It was quite simply, what can you do for this dream you have to be a medical doctor? 6 days a week, 15 to 18 hours per day, sometimes 30 hours straight, many times skipping meals, just going. And you barely have the energy to even do your own laundry on that one day off a week you get. And so in there, you come to a place where you're like, I need something to make me feel good about myself, something. And about the only thing that could possibly fit in there was food, because I have to eat.
Right.
So, and I had no money, and I love food, and it needed to be quick and easy. And the thing that fit so perfectly well in those circumstances was fast food, junk food.
I was hoping you were going to say sprouting.
I needed sprouting in my life, but if you asked me what is a sprout, in 2007, 2008, when I was in it, I knew nothing about that, Doug. I knew nothing about what is a sprout. I don't know. Is that the stuff that they put on a Jimmy John sandwich?
Right.
So anyway, when it didn't happen overnight, but these choices caught up to me, and it really seemed to come to a head when I was in my early 30s. And I was 50 pounds overweight. I had high blood pressure. I had high cholesterol. I was extremely anxious. I was depressed. I was in a place where it didn't matter what was happening in my professional life. Many people who did not know me would probably say your life is great. You're accomplishing all your goals. And I would say to you, I felt like crap. And I hated myself. I did not like the man in the mirror. And I knew that something needed to change, and I didn't know what that would be. And ultimately what I discovered, Doug, was that it was food.
Wow.
Food transformed my life. And going back to the person that I was as a teenager who decided to commit my life to trying to improve other people's lives. When you find something that helps you to transform your own life from a health perspective, then as a medical doctor, you have no choice. You are compelled to share this information with your patients, whether the system supports you on that or not. And so this became the foundation of my defining who I was as a healer, as a gastroenterologist, was that it starts with food. And the expression of that evolved. So at first it was me in a combined effort, like working as a team with my patients, learning together. Me bringing the ideas of nutrition into my clinic, me studying at night after, my daughter, who was a newborn at the time, she would be asleep, and I would crack open and start reading about nutrition when I could have, watched TV. And it evolved from that place to where all of a sudden my patients started having their own transformations. And this became so powerful and overwhelming that it seemed inappropriate for me to contain the story within a clinic, that it needed to be more widely accessible. And that led to me opening my Instagram account, my social media, in 2016. And one thing led to another. And I met our mutual friend Simon Hill in 2018, and we had a podcast go viral. That led to a book deal. The book deal became a New York Times bestseller. And, now here I am, and I'm trying to pursue this same dream of wanting to just make some sort of positive contribution to people's lives. But I'm doing it, trying to do it on a broader scale now. So that's, if you ask me, it's a long-winded answer, but this is who I am.
It's beautiful. So, and we met online through Sprouts and Sprouting on Instagram. So
it was like a Sprout date, or Sprouter instead of Tinder. It was Sprouter. It was like online dating for Sprout fans.
Well, I had your book, and then you followed me, and then it was like, wow, holy cow, Dr. B, the gut health MD, is following me. And then I reached out on DMs. And here we are years later. And, although we haven't met in physical person, like, I feel like I know you really well, and your family, you're beautiful. So I feel I should get on a plane immediately. But for the sake of this, like in this, this is a bonus material that what we wanted to talk about is, number one, you've written two New York Times bestselling books, the Fiber Fueled and the Fiber Fuel Cookbook. And in those books, you mention sprouting and sprouts. So, but in first, you say about Americans, let's talk about fiber for a second. What role does fiber play, and why are most people deficient in it?
Well, the exciting thing about this, Doug, is that you can't separate fiber from sprouts. All sprouts contain fiber.
Right. So
the conversation that we're about to have is directly applicable to everything that the students are learning within your masterclass. So fiber, to me, needs to fire their PR agent and find a new one.
Right.
Because it's so misinterpreted and misunderstood, and we have allowed it to be reduced down to something that people describe as boring, or they interpret as boring. Many people think of fiber as like the orange drink that your grandma would stir so that she could have a bowel movement. Like, how much can we degrade fiber. And yet there has been this renaissance that's taking place where fiber is reemerging, and it's coming first into scientific consciousness through discovery of the microbiome, specifically the gut microbiome. We didn't know very much about this prior to about 2006, but in the 15 plus years since we started to learn more about the microbiome, we are learning that this is an essential part of human health, that living inside of us are 38 trillion living microorganisms, mostly bacteria. They're concentrated in our colon, and they're connected to our digestion, our immune system, our metabolism, our hormones, our mood, our brain health, our energy levels. If you're listening to this at home, you may have to go back and re-listen to what I just said again, because it's so important. This is everything that matters for human health. And it turns out that these microbes that live inside of us, Doug, they, much like us, they need a source of energy. They need to eat. They're no different than us in that regard. Living creatures need food. They need nutrition. And the nutrition that they love the most, that they thrive on, is fiber. Fiber is a carbohydrate. It is found in plants. All plants contain fiber, therefore all sprouts contain fiber. And fiber is interesting and unique because we, despite our complexity as humans, despite how egotistical we may be about our position within this planet, we lack the capacity, the ability to digest fiber. We don't have the enzymes for it. And that's really actually quite important, because that allows fiber then to sort of sneak past the the digestive enzymes and the digestive mechanism of your small intestine, and sneaks through untouched. And it is allowed to arrive into your colon, where these 38 trillion microbes are very hungry. And they get into an absolute feeding frenzy because fiber is their preferred food. And what we lack, they have in spades. They have, a single bacteria, which is a single-celled organism, could have hundreds of enzymes that we don't have as humans. And collectively, they have tens of thousands of enzymes to break down and process fiber. And when they do this, Doug, from the fiber, it stops being fiber. And what is released are the most healing, the most anti-inflammatory compounds that I have come across in all of my study of medicine, which are the short-chain fatty acids, like butyrate, acetate, propionate. And these short-chain fatty acids, they have healing effects throughout the entire body. I mean, we could talk for an hour about what they do in your gut and for your metabolism and your immune system and your hormones and your brain. They go everywhere, and everywhere they go, they do good for you. Wow. You want them. And the way that we get them is by consuming dietary fiber, because the fiber is the ingredient that your microbes need in order to produce them. And so, Doug, there was a study, my favorite fiber study of all time was published in 2019. And I actually just sent an email about 2 hours ago to someone talking about it. Professor Andrew Reynolds, and this was published in The Lancet. And what he did is he compiled 135 million years of human information. Think about that. 135 million years of human information. He compiled this. And what he discovered is that when people consume more dietary fiber, they live longer. They're less likely to have a heart attack. They're less likely to die of heart disease. They're less likely to be diagnosed with many different types of cancer. They're less likely to die of cancer. They're less likely to have a stroke, and less likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. And fiber is not, again, hard to find. All sprouts contain fiber. All plants contain fiber. Yet, the problem that we have, and why this has become my soapbox, and why I'm out here pounding the drum, is that 95% of Americans don't even get the minimal amount of fiber. So this, to me, is not just a deficiency. This is our most pressing, most important deficiency, because if we address this, we're going to have a lot of healthy Americans.
Well, what is the difference between soluble and insoluble fiber?
So you have to understand that fiber is insanely complex from a biochemical perspective. Like, you could have literal chemists looking at a fiber molecule and not really knowing how to even describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that context, there was an effort that was made many years ago to simplify this so that this could be actually discussed. And they chose to break fiber into two main types. So these are families. There's many, many different types of fiber, but within the sort of bigger umbrella of fiber, there are two main families, soluble and insoluble. And it means what these words mean, which is that soluble means that if you take that type of fiber and you put it into a beverage, if I were to put soluble fiber into this mug with my matcha tea, it would dissolve. It would disappear. You would not see it. But on the flip side, insoluble fiber, if I were to put it in here, there's nothing I can do to make it disappear. The insoluble fiber will continue to stay there in that form. And that's the roughage. That's the grit. And now the behavior of these two types of fiber is slightly different. Soluble fiber is more likely to be fermented. And what that means in terms of fermentation is that your gut microbes are consuming it. And they do produce a bit of gas when this happens. And so that gas, that's okay, because that means you're getting short chain fatty acids, but also your body becomes more adapted to fiber over time. So any gas that you experience when you increase your fiber intake, it will eventually get better. But insoluble fiber is really just kind of moving its way through your intestines, and it's coming out the other end as a robust, healthy bowel movement. So they're a bit different.
Okay. And the role that fiber plays, the number one role, right, or that people think about taking fiber, is to have a good movement. What's the difference between taking fiber supplements versus consuming the fiber through whole plants?
So, let me say this. We should not equate these two things. They're different. And I do believe, in my experience as a gastroenterologist, having treated thousands of people and having used fiber supplements in thousands of people, that there is a benefit to fiber supplements, but let's not equate these things. It's not the same.
Okay.
And we need to start with dietary fiber. Because everything that you heard me say a moment ago about how wonderful dietary fiber is, reducing our risk of heart disease and cancer and diabetes and stroke and whatnot, that was dietary fiber. That means you're getting fiber from a whole plant food. And when we consume plants, they don't just contain fiber. They also contain polyphenols and vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals and many other beautiful, amazing things that nature has provided for us that are good for us as humans. And so when you isolate something and you extract it, you don't get the same benefit that you would get if it were coming from a whole food. So I don't want to disparage fiber supplements, because I've had great success as a gastroenterologist, including them. But what I want people to understand is we need to always start with diet. Food needs to come first, always.
And we'll jump into sprouts for a minute. When did you start sprouting, and what was the motivating force to get you to start to grow your own sprouts in your household?
So ironically, and this is, honestly, Doug, this is in a way an argument in favor of saying that it's good that we have many different voices that exist in our society, and that we, allow many different voices to be out there. Because ironically, the place where I learned about sprouts was from Joe Rogan.
Right.
Not him specifically, but he had Rhonda Patrick
Right.
on his show many years ago. And she was heralding the benefits of broccoli sprouts. And it opened up my both myself and my wife, our interest in the benefits, the health benefits of broccoli sprouts. And so we started to read and learn more about this. Jed Fahey from Johns Hopkins University has been involved in sprouting research and broccoli sprout research for many years. And we came upon his work. And this led to my wife and I incorporating broccoli sprouts into our family routine. So not just for myself or herself, but also being delivered for our children, finding ways to ensure that our children would include broccoli sprouts in their daily routine. So it really was initially broccoli sprouts. And there was an expansion that took place. And I would, to be completely frank and honest, say to you that the expansion beyond broccoli sprouts was, I think, predominantly motivated by you, to be honest with you. So there was enthusiasm for broccoli sprouts. There was enthusiasm for sprouting in some capacity. But then I read your book. And after reading the Sprout book, it, in a way, opened and unlocked Pandora's box in my life, because then it really allowed me to see the tremendous value that exists in sprouting beyond just broccoli.
Yeah, I feel that if the dollars were there and the research was done, there'd be troves of information and research and benefits, on all sprouts from that level.
If research dollars were assigned based upon the potential to improve human health and human lives, we would be funding a very different research than we currently fund.
Yeah.
And it is problematic because it's a paradox, or it's an issue that we are instead funding things that in many cases are not in fact good for humans.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Dr. Fahey is also part of our bonus materials. So we've got some bonus interviews with Dr. Fahey, who's extraordinary individual.
I had a feeling he would be in here somewhere.
Yeah. When we talk about sprouts, and you talk about growing them, for you, how many jars are you growing at any given time?
I like to sort of attack this in terms of different phases of sprouting. So there are the sprouts that I can whip up in 2 days or 3 days. And that is more along the lines of lentils, peas, chickpeas, the quick sprouts. And so those I tend to be honest, consume on a higher level than I do the other forms of sprouts. But part of it is they're so readily accessible. So when I want them, I can have them very quickly. And then there are the ones that I know I need, but I have to plan ahead. And those are the intermediate level sprouts, like the 5-day sprouts, like broccoli sprouts, 5 to 7 days. And then finally, there are the ones that take even longer than that they're just, to me, they're so good, they're worth it. And they're unlikely to be the foundation from a consumption perspective. Like, I'm not going to consume them on such a high level. But I like to make sure that I'm adequately getting enough of them in the rotation to be able to enjoy them. And an example of that would be onion sprouts. I think that onion sprouts are the most delicious sprouts. I mean, they're, from a flavor profile perspective, game changers.
Yeah.
And so I like to have a little bit of this, like, sort of 3-phase approach, like 1 or 2 bottles of short term, 1 of broccoli, and 1 of onion. That's sort of my typical.
It's really interesting, when you say that. And when we talk about sprouts as medicine, right? The view that I've been talking about, for 5 years now, is sprouts as food, right? Sprouts as vitamins and minerals, sprouts as medicine. How are these vegetables medicine?
Nature provides. Nature is incredible. And sprouting is about transformation. What was a seed and remained a seed for a very long period of time, if you think about it within the context of a plant life cycle. It remains dormant as a seed for so long, and then you basically punch in the secret code, and it comes to life, and it germinates, and it opens up, and it unlocks its potential. And in there, the benefits that you discuss in this masterclass, increased enhancement of protein and fiber, and it's quite fascinating to think about increasing of vitamins. But there are these phytochemicals. Phytochemical means plant-based chemical. And many of our modern prescriptions and pills are medicines. They were phytochemicals. And we discovered them, and the pharmaceutical company basically capitalized on them. But they originated from a plant. And when you think about these sprouts, they are a unique window in the life cycle of a plant, where in many cases you will find a disproportionate representation of these medicinal chemicals. They're highly concentrated. So as an example, and I know that I'm quite sure that you've already discussed this within the masterclass, but I'm going to come back to it because I think it's important for people to hear that. For example, with broccoli sprouts, what I was attracted to was that you could get this chemical compound called sulforaphane. And it's actually very hard for them to biochemically isolate this and turn it into a supplement or a medicine. But within the context of a sprout, you will find 50 to 100 times more sulforaphane, gram for gram, in broccoli sprouts than you would find in mature adult broccoli. And this is where the sort of pungent, bitter flavor comes from. And what I say to you, the people who are enthusiastic about sprouting, is I say to you, embrace the bitter. Because that bitterness, that is nature providing something that is designed to help you in terms of your body heal and be optimized and protect you from cancer. And that is, in this case, in the case of the broccoli sprouts, that is the sulforaphane.
Wow. And from a level, of daily consumption, what do you recommend, of taking therapeutic levels or medicinal levels of broccoli sprouts? What would you recommend?
It's a good question, Doug. So I believe that the serving size is 2 to 4 ounces of broccoli sprouts. And I would be curious to hear what Dr. Fahey has to say about this, because this is an area where he is very deeply involved with these sort of specific questions. But I think that from my perspective, I don't know what the right amount is to say for a particular condition, right? So, but what I do know is that if you can taste the bitterness, then you are on the right track, right? It's kind of quite simple, that's simple. And in the beginning, you may want to start on a lighter level so that you can allow your body to get adjusted to what you're doing. But eventually you would love to be in a position where you have, what would essentially be somewhere in the range of a full cup of broccoli sprouts. That to me would be sort of the place that you ultimately want to be on a routine daily basis.
And from a level that digestion occurs, in order for the body to assimilate the nutritive factors, do things have to be turned into a liquid? How does it happen? You chew the food, you break it down, goes into the small intestine, goes into the stomach, and then the small intestine, then the large intestine. What's happening there? And is there a difference between having raw or living foods like sprouts versus steamed, cooked, fried, baked vegetables?
Yeah, so this is a good question. And the way in which nature has structured the plant is quite fascinating. Now, these things that we're talking about, I mentioned a phytochemical a moment ago called sulforaphane.
Mm-hmm.
And sulforaphane falls into a family or class of phytochemicals called isothiocyanates. Don't worry, you're not going to be quizzed on this, people. It's okay. Just bear with me here. So these isothiocyanates, these are cancer fighters. And they're good for humans. But what they're also designed to be, think about that bitterness, pungency, is it's designed to repel pests. So in some ways, nature has the same thing that can be anti-inflammatory and beneficial to human health is the thing that actually protects the plant from being consumed by bugs.
Mm.
And so that was the original intent from an evolutionary perspective. Why, the broccoli seed and the sprout has this, and this would also explain why it would be more concentrated in the beginning. Because if you want a shot at life, you can't be consumed when you're just a little sprout. You got to be given a chance to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to get to the isothiocyanate, there's actually an important step that needs to take place. The isothiocyanate, the sulforaphane, it's not actually in its final form when the sprout is just sitting there. Nature has set it up in a way that's almost like conceptually similar, for lack of a better analogy, conceptually similar to a bomb, which is that you have two chambers that contain chemicals, and they're separate. They're kept separate by nature. But if they mix together, then they will create this chemical reaction that results in the production of this compound, this sulforaphane. The two chambers, one are called glucosinolates, and the second part is an enzyme called myrosinase. All right, so when you take the glucosinolates and the myrosinase and you disrupt the chamber and the chemicals mix, you get this fantastic cancer-fighting phytochemical.
Amazing.
So what that means is we have to chew our food. And it comes back to the question that you're answering me, because this is not sprouting 101. We are far beyond sprouting 101 right now. I would argue that right now where we are, Doug, with the students within the master classes, like this is master's level sproutery.
Yeah.
300 level course. But when we talk about this glucosinolate and this myrosinase, again, myrosinase is the enzyme that is necessary to change the glucosinolate into the cancer fighting chemical. The myrosinase is heat sensitive. So this is an important thing, because if you cook your sprouts, or if you cook your food, broccoli, for example, you actually can eliminate this chemical, this enzyme. And then this by itself, it's not possible for it to be converted into the isothiocyanate. So you don't get that benefit. So now here's a trick that I want to teach everyone. And this applies to not just sprouts, but also mature cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and things like this, is that if you cook the food, and by the way, if you buy frozen broccoli, it's been cooked. So it gets cooked before they freeze it. If you cook your food and you accidentally eliminate this enzyme, well, the good news is you can get mustard seed powder. Mustard seed powder actually contains the enzyme, myrosinase.
Mm.
So if you were to cook your food, whether it be cruciferous vegetables like broccoli sprouts, or mature broccoli or cauliflower or whatever it may be, sprinkle some mustard seed powder on it, and you will be enhancing the cancer fighting capacity of what you're eating, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole world that we're scratching the surface on. And when I wrote the book, it wasn't designed to be kind of the end all. It was to kind of launch more discussion, more research, more enthusiasm around sprouts and sprouting. And I think that, your work with Fiber Fueled and your social media has been so educational, informative for me. and for all the people that I know, who see it. And, I expect many more conversations, and I think we're going to go deeper in the future. And I'm really grateful, that you chimed in, and we'll put notes of how people can find you and your work. And so grateful, to know you. So thank you so much, Dr. B.
Thank you, Doug. It's a pleasure. You are a friend of mine, and I think you're a great person. You're doing amazing work. And I'm also grateful for the positive influence that you've been in my life, because as I mentioned before, you are the person who motivated me to take on sprouting in a higher capacity. And now I believe that sprouting is an essential part of 21st century nutrition. Essential. Everyone should be doing it. And so I'm really glad that you're here offering this masterclass so that the people who are here can learn about this essential tool and apply it to their life, because I think good things are to come.
Well, terrific. Well, we'll have the best day ever, and we'll be in touch very soon.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this interview from the Commune podcast, then click subscribe and check out this video right here.